At the beginning of the story, we are shown a train passing through a lonely, barren desert area. Inside the train, a man named Virgil is sitting quietly and eating bread. In front of him, a poor woman is trying to calm her crying child. After some time, the train stops at a station. Then Virgil gives half of his bread to the woman and gets off the train himself. After stepping outside, he goes to a small nearby shop and asks the shopkeeper about a certain person's address. However, the shopkeeper ignores him completely and keeps watching TV without saying a word. Then Virgil asks him where the bathroom is. The shopkeeper casually points toward it. A little later, Virgil reaches the bathroom and sees that it is so filthy that it is difficult even to stand there. But helplessly, he has to use it anyway. Just then, a man from outside calls out and asks, "Maybe you're waiting to take someone to the compound?" Virgil nods his head in agreement, and the man leaves. After coming out of the bathroom, while Virgil is washing his hands, another man tells him, "Don't waste water." After this, we see Virgil leaving for the compound along with a truck driver named Keith. The desert heat was unbearable, so Virgil turned on the air conditioner. But Keith immediately yelled at him and said that the AC puts extra load on the engine, which could cause it to break down. Because of this, Virgil turned the AC off. After traveling for a long time, one of their truck's tires suddenly burst, forcing them to stop and replace it. While they were there, they saw two wild dogs fighting. Keith managed to scare one of them away, but the other dog was badly injured and could no longer walk. So, to end its suffering, Keith killed the dog with a rock. After changing the tire, the two continued their journey. When night fell, they stopped near a gas station. While sitting by the fire, Keith asked Virgil why he was going to the compound. Virgil replied that he had found a job there. Keith explained to him that the compound only offered hard labor and nothing more. But for Virgil, hard work was never a problem. The next morning, Keith fell asleep, and Virgil took over driving the truck. After a while, the heat became unbearable for Virgil, so he turned the AC on again. But this time, the engine actually broke down. When Keith found out, he angrily shouted at Virgil. Virgil apologized and then walked away for a moment to relieve himself. While returning, his eyes fell on a pile of rocks. He moved one of the stones aside and looked underneath it, only to discover a rock made of gold. Seeing this, Virgil completely shocked, and he immediately called Keith over. Keith was also shocked when he saw it. He pulled out a lighter and said that if the stone turned black or burned, then it wasn't gold. But when he tested it with the flame, nothing happened to the rock. That's when both of them realized they had found real gold. They immediately started digging around it. However, the rock was so huge that even after digging deep into the ground, they still couldn't pull it out completely. Then they tied a rope to the truck and tried to drag it out. But that method failed as well. As the sun began to set, Keith went to gather firewood. While doing so, he warned Virgil that wild dogs roamed around that area and that they were only scared of fire. After hearing this, Virgil also went with Keith to search for wood. When night fell, the two men sat beside the fire. After finding so much gold, they happily danced around in excitement. Keith said that their lives were about to change forever. After a while, Keith said, "We can't pull out such a huge gold rock by ourselves. We'll need an excavator machine." He told Virgil that he knew some people who could help them get one. Then he said, You go to the city and bring the machine. I'll stay here and guard the gold. But Virgil refused. He said, "Nobody knows me in the city, and I'm used to surviving in the desert. You go. I'll stay here and protect the gold." Keith thought for a moment and finally agreed. The next morning, Keith gave Virgil some food supplies, cloth for a camp, a knife, and a satellite phone. He said, "I'm going to get an excavator. It may take me 5 days, but I'll try to return even sooner." After saying that, Keith got into the truck and drove off into the desert. Once Keith had left, Virgil tied the tent cloth to a tree and set up a small camp. Then he checked the satellite phone, and everything seemed to be working fine. After resting for some time, he went out in the evening to collect firewood. When he returned, he saw a large scorpion crawling near the tent. He quickly grabbed a stick and chased it away after striking it. Later that night, he heated some food and had just started eating when he heard the sounds of wild dogs barking and fighting somewhere in the distance. His heart started pounding rapidly. He immediately grabbed the knife and spent the entire night awake, keeping watch. By morning, he was completely exhausted. A little later, when Virgil went to relieve himself, he was using water very carefully and sparingly. Just then, the satellite phone started ringing, so he quickly ran back toward the camp. But by the time he reached it, the call had already ended. Worried and restless, Virgil began wandering around the area. While walking, he came across an old crashed airplane. He thought it would be a good place to spend the night, but since the gold couldn't be seen from there, he changed his mind. Instead, he carried some broken pieces of the plane back to his tent so he could use them as shade from the scorching sun. After some time, exhaustion took over and he fell asleep. When he woke up, his face had been badly burned by the sunlight. Despite the pain, he went back and sat beside the gold, slowly beginning to talk to himself, almost as if he had started treating the gold like a companion. Sitting there, Virgil kept wondering how he would ever take such enormous wealth with him. Suddenly, an idea came to his mind. He decided to break off a small piece of the gold rock. He struggled against it for a long time and eventually managed to chip off a small piece. Just then, the satellite phone rang again. When he looked at the screen, he saw Keith's name. Virgil quickly answered the call. Keith said, "It's taking me longer than expected. The truck engine keeps breaking down." Excitedly, Virgil replied, "I managed to break off a small piece of the gold." Keith told him, "Just stay there and protect the gold. I'll return soon." That night, while Virgil was sitting near the gold, wild dogs suddenly began circling around him. He immediately grabbed a burning piece of wood and chased them away. The next morning, he filled a bottle with a little water and had just started drinking when he suddenly noticed a snake slithering toward him. Virgil instantly tried to strike it, but the snake escaped. At that moment, he realized that the water bottle had fallen over, and half the water had soaked into the ground. Now he had very little water left, and he would have to survive on it until Keith returned. After some time, Virgil went back to the crashed airplane to gather more materials for his tent. But then he noticed someone walking toward him in the distance. Terrified, he quickly hid inside the plane. A few moments later, the stranger came right next to the wreckage and shouted, "Get out of my plane!" Virgil slowly stepped outside and was shocked to discover that the person was a woman. The woman tried to offer Virgil some food and water, but he refused to take anything. She asked him, "What are you doing here in the middle of the desert?" Virgil stayed silent and gave no answer. After a moment, he quietly got up and started walking away. The woman then said, "You're definitely hiding something from me. I think there's something else here." But even then, Virgil said nothing and kept walking. The woman began following him, repeatedly asking how he had ended up there. Finally, irritated and frustrated, Virgil snapped and said, "Mind your own business." Then he angrily returned to his tent, but the woman still refused to back off. She followed him all the way to the camp and suddenly started pulling at the tent. Seeing this made Virgil lose control completely. In a fit of rage, he grabbed his axe and attacked her. With a single strike, she died on the spot. After that, Virgil dug a pit and buried the woman's body. But sometime later, wild dogs arrived and began digging up the corpse to eat it. Virgil frightened them away and then carried the body farther into the desert before setting it on fire. While doing all this, he felt deeply disturbed and guilty. The next morning, he woke up to the sound of the satellite phone ringing. Keith said, "I managed to get the excavator, but it's going to take me a few more days to return. The truck is moving very slowly." Virgil replied with only one word, "Okay." As the days passed, his condition kept getting worse. At one point, he noticed a truck passing through the desert nearby, but because of his greed for the gold, he didn't ask for help. He simply watched it drive away in silence. Later that evening, while collecting firewood, he suddenly saw a massive tornado-like sandstorm moving toward him from a distance. Terrified, Virgil ran toward his tent, but the storm was so powerful that it completely blew the tent away. Virgil ran desperately to save his life, but the storm surrounded him in darkness. Suddenly, a sharp tree branch pierced into his stomach, and he screamed in pain. After some time, the storm finally stopped. When Virgil opened his eyes, he realized that he was buried deep in the sand. With great difficulty, Virgil managed to crawl out of the sand and realized that the wooden branch was still stuck in his stomach. But despite the terrible pain, he walked straight toward the gold rock. As he brushed away the sand and saw the shining gold again, a sense of relief appeared on his face. Gathering all his courage, he pulled the branch out of his stomach, causing blood to pour from the wound. Virgil quickly heated the lid of a metal can in the fire and pressed it against his wound to seal it. The pain was unbearable, and he began screaming loudly in agony. In a state of madness and desperation, he started rubbing sand all over his face before finally collapsing unconscious on the ground. After some time, when he regained consciousness, he saw another woman standing in front of him, holding a bow and arrow in her hands. Virgil thought that it was the same woman he had killed earlier. But instead of attacking him, the woman gave him water to drink and then quietly walked away. The next day, when Virgil woke up again, the woman was nowhere to be seen. He began to think that perhaps everything had just been a hallucination. Just then, the satellite phone started ringing. Virgil told Keith everything that had happened. After hearing him out, Keith said, "If that woman comes back again, kill her too." Sometime later, the woman actually returned and started helping Virgil. But by now, Virgil was completely obsessed with the gold. In anger, he shouted at the woman and told her to stay away from him. But before leaving, the woman asked only one question: "Have you seen my sister?" Virgil remained silent. At that moment, Virgil's condition became far worse, and he collapsed unconscious once again. Sometime later, when he regained consciousness, he found fire burning around him while wild dogs surrounded him from every side. Terrified, he quickly called Keith and cried, "Please come fast, or these dogs will kill me." Keith replied that he was nearby and would arrive soon. But in reality, Keith was still far away, watching Virgil through a pair of binoculars. Then the wild dogs attacked Virgil. In the end, they brutally tore him apart and killed him. But even in his final moments, the only thing reflected in Virgil's eyes was the gold. From a distance, Keith watched everything happen. In truth, Keith had planned to keep all the gold for himself from the very beginning. After some time, Keith finally arrived with the truck and the excavator. He saw Virgil's dead body lying there and immediately walked toward the gold. But the moment he took another step forward, an arrow shot straight into his chest. Keith couldn't even understand what had happened, and within moments, he too died. This story reminds us that greed often destroys everything. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like. And for more interesting stories like this, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you.